Good day. Today's lesson is about subjects and predicates. We're going to learn in this lesson about simple subjects and predicates. We're going to learn about the complete subjects and predicates. We're going to also learn about, in terms of subjects, the inverted order of the subjects. In terms of predicates, we're going to learn about verb phrases, and we're going to learn more about linking verbs, and we're going to learn about both of them as compound subjects and compound predicates. So let's get started with part 1, subjects. Now let's look at the sentence. Fadi's classmates dislike his aloofness. Now we cannot call this a sentence unless it has a subject and it has a predicate. So what is a subject? The subject is what or who the sentence talks about. So does it talk about Fadi or does it talk about the classmates? Of course, the sentence is about Fadi's classmates, though the subject is classmates. So what is the subject? The subject is actually the main word in the complete subject. The complete subject is Fadi's classmates, and the main word in the complete subject is classmates. And classmates here performs the action, which is the action of disliking. This is the verb. Therefore, this is your subject. Now, in English language, the subject and the verb are organized in a way where the subject comes before the verb. So a typical sentence starts with an S, which is the subject, followed by the verb. In many cases, however, the subject and verb can be inverted. So when we invert the order and we place the verb before the subject, we call this an inverted sentence. Now let's look at the sentence as an example. Long and loud cheered the crowd. Many times it's very hard for students to spot the subject in an inverted order. So the first step in inverted order or any other sentence is to spot the verb first and then ask the question of who or what performed the action. So in this sentence where long and loud cheered the crowd, we look at the verb, which is cheered, that's the verb, and ask yourself this question, which is who or what performed the action. And of course, the result of your question will be your subject. Who cheered, of course, is the crowd. So the crowd here in the sentence is your subject. So if you notice that the sentence structure is verb plus subject. Therefore, this is called an inverted order. An inverted order in terms of grammar is used to focus on the verb more on than in the subject. And it's typically used in poems. If you read in a poem, you find in a poem that poets try to manipulate the verse to focus on the event more than on the subject. Now let's take these two sentences as an example. There goes the groom, and here comes the bride. Now if you look at the each of these sentences, you notice that these are both inverted order, where the verb precedes the subject. Grows the groom and comes the bride. Okay? So notice that these two sentences start with very specific words. They're there and here. Typically in English language, whenever these two words start a sentence, we invert the order of the subject and the verb. So the words there and here, as they introduce a sentence, we tend to invert the order. There goes the groom, and here comes the bride. A third example of inverting the order in English language is in terms of questions. If you look at this question, has he gone to the lake yet? Now the question starts with the first part of the verb, which is has, followed by the subject, and then followed by the second part of the verb. So this verb actually is a verb phrase and interluded by the subject of the sentence. So since the question starts with the verb, we call this also an inverted order of the subject and verb, because typically it's a verb followed by the subject. In part 2, we're going to discuss predicates in terms of complete predicates, simple predicates, verb phrases, and linking verbs.